You're listening to the Career Interrupted podcast. I'm your host, Joy Foster. Today, I'm speaking with Stephanie Drax, the founder of Leapfrog Remedies, the first lactoferrin brand in the UK. For people who don't know what lactoferrin is, it is coined by scientists as a miracle molecule, and it is the key ingredient of mother's milk, and it has a kaleidoscope of health benefits. And for those of you who are lactose intolerant, like myself, you'll be pleased to know you can use it and leverage it even if you have a lactose intolerance. So welcome, Stephanie. I'm so glad you're here. Obviously, this is very exciting, a miracle molecule. Tell us a little bit about Leapfrog before we get into your career interruption. Just tell us a little bit about what it is and how people can use it.
So it's a great opportunity and a privilege and a challenge to be the founder of this brand, because I'm really putting lactoferrin under the spotlight and nobody's ever heard of lactoferrin. So the education piece is huge. But essentially, as you said in your introduction, thank you, it's the key ingredient of colostrum and mother's milk. So you know why we say breast is best, because it's full of all these goodies. Lactoferrin is the first violinist. So it is the thing that kickstarts a baby's immunity, that helps them neurologically, that helps with their weight, their skin, everything. It is antiviral, antibacterial, anti-inflammatory, immune modulating, gut enhancing. It does so many things. It sort of blows my mind continuously. But if you think a baby eats nothing but that milk between 0 and 6 months, and yet after 6 months, you have this incredibly intelligent, bouncing, healthy, hopefully baby, that's lactoferrin at work. And we have lactoferrin inside these chewable tablets called Leapfrog Immune, Snooze, and Focus. And ours comes from grass-fed cow's milk. Before people worry that it's coming from breast milk, it's not. It's grass-fed cow's milk, because cow's milk and human milk is very similar. So we take it from the cow's milk, it's dried, and then we put it into these delicious chewable tablets. So you can take it at the first sign of a cold, you can take it for brain benefits. We can get into that later, but it's an extraordinary miracle molecule.
Well, I love it. And I have to say, I have been trying out the Focus the last week and a half, and it has been a wonderful thing to add into my repertoire of supplements that I'm using. But really, it has made a huge difference. And I can tell when I've used it versus when I'm not using it. And I've been diagnosed with ADHD, and it's something that I was interested in trying as something to help me to focus. And it's been really great. So I really appreciate you sending that along to me. And I wanted to get you on the podcast because your story is extraordinary. So you've been an actress, you've been a journalist, you've set up a business that went bust, and now you're doing this. So you have an incredible story that I know our listeners are going to want to hear. So tell us about your career interruption journey, because you've had a few interruptions, and I'd love to hear some of the details.
Yeah, well, thank you. As you stated, I started out as an actress, so it was not so much career interruptions as like career stall. I started my career actually having the great fortune to work at Heyday Films, which is the production company that did Harry Potter. And I worked for that producer for the first year after graduating. And that is the only sensible office job I have ever had. He tried to keep me, and I said, no, I'm going to go and be an actress. He was like, okay. So off I went and did that. And it wasn't a complete failure by any stretch. I worked with Rob Lowe, I worked with Benedict Cumberbatch. I had some excellent highs and then some crushing lows. But I don't regret it. It taught me amazing, resilience and determination. And also, getting over your fear, walking out on stage in front of 1,000 people is terrifying every time. But you have to do it because people have paid to come and watch something. So you kind of got to go on. So yeah, it taught me a lot. But like you said, there were times where I wasn't doing anything. And so in those interruptions, I had to find something else to do. And, opportunities arrive, when there's time to think. And I moved into journalism, had a great opportunity to work at the Telegraph. And I worked on the news desk, and I worked for the travel desk. And so I got to travel the world and go on 5-star safaris and, 5-star. It was amazing. Not all 5-star, I have to say, more adventurous things too. And that was an amazing opportunity as well. So yeah, I've been a bit like an electron, pinballing between things in my 20s and 30s. And then I had a kind of a light bulb moment, and I started my previous business that, as you said, so epically failed. Actually, I would say I walked away from it. But yes, I started a business creating city guide films for in-flight entertainment. So I made these 5-minute films on all the etiquette and how to get around town and what the most important buildings were in the town. And it was really fun traveling all around the world and selling it to American Airlines, Singapore Airlines, British Airways. They were on all these flights. So somebody listening, watching might have seen one, and that was a great opportunity as well. But it ultimately didn't have legs. So yes, then I found my current job. And that
well, I just want to go back to the business that in theory, failed. It didn't scale. And that's what your husband said to you. And I mean, you said that was crushing blow when your husband said, this is not going to scale. Take us to that point, because that feels like that's a really critical point in your story.
I could probably take you physically to that point, because it was on the sofa behind me. And I can see the square inch of the sofa I was looking at the moment he said, look, the thing is, it's just not a scalable business. Mm. And I mean, my heart sank. I felt sick. I'd spent 4 years, I think, pouring everything into this business, flying all around the world with like these little crews and sunrise, sunsets. I mean, we'd worked so hard, but it wasn't a scalable business. And he was absolutely right. I just had 2 kids. Like, I had 2 little babies. I was in labor when I was talking to one of the tourism boards. I was like, I think I'm going into labor right now with my first child. He was in Rio, and I don't know what he thought when I said that, but I was trying to do everything, and I couldn't get on a plane anymore. Yeah. But also doing it as we were doing it, quite kind of analog, going to the places, filming it, coming back with the footage, and then editing it, and then putting it on planes. It wasn't a scalable business. It needed me to do it, and I couldn't be present. I couldn't. And as soon as you filmed a city, it changes, which is what's wonderful. And then you have to kind of go back and just thinking about it now, it wasn't a scalable business. And it was the most crushing thing anybody could have said to me, but also the most liberating thing, because I look back at that moment and that square inch of sofa, and I think it something clicked in my mind, and I knew that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I knew that I loved running my own business, but this wasn't the business, and I would find something else.
That's really powerful. I think, I'm in my 3rd business now. And, when you stop a business to focus on another business, there is a part of you that feels like it's dying, because, it is, or it's like a child even, and it does feel really hard to let go of one and start another one. And I've done that a couple times, and so I know how that feels, but, probably not even to the extent that you had to do it. So in that moment, when it's that kind of crushing feeling, like, I've put my all into this, and now the reality is I've got these 2 little kids. I can't travel the way that I was traveling. I can't work the way that I was working. And obviously you were able to bring a new idea into the world. But before you got there, what were the fears and doubts that came in as you sort of closed the doors on the business that you'd been spending a lot of time building and energy building? What were the thoughts that came to your mind at that moment?
I don't have any skills. I don't know what I'm doing. I have nothing to offer. I don't have a legal degree. I don't have a finance degree. I haven't really worked in a business other than that 1 year. Like, what am I going to do? I'm quite old now. This is me thinking about that. I'm even older now. In my 30s, I was scared. I mean, talk about fear. I was absolutely rigid with fear that I was not going to find something else to do. I'd wasted my life, chasing an acting dream, champagne lifestyle, beer budget, journalism. What was I going to spend the rest of my life doing? And did I have the skills other than words to do anything? But then actually, again, it was my husband. And, it's good to have a cheerleader that you live with, that you don't have to pay. He said to me, hang on a second, though. You are the most tenacious person I have ever met. You do not give up. You go and you go and you go. And if there's an obstacle, you crawl over it, you crawl under it, you just you do. And it's so true. So, just an example of that was when I was trying to get some money from the tourism board in London to stick at the end of the video to go onto British Airways to say that it was sponsored by, Visit London. And I got a closed doors. And then I saw Ed Vaizey on South Ken Tube platform. And he was a politician at that time. He was the Minister for Culture and Sport. And I thought, this doesn't happen very often. I went straight up to him and I said, hello. I have a business. I'm making city guide films for London. It showcases London in the most extraordinary way. It's seen by millions of passengers all across the globe. Wouldn't you love to have like the logo for Britain or Visit London or Visit UK at the end? And he gave me the number of a man, Conrad Bird, who invited me into Downing Street. So the next week I went into Downing Street and met with them, and they sponsored it. Got their letter at the end. And I thought, if I hadn't gone up and spoken to him, that would never have happened. And so that's what I have. That's my skill and that's sort of what I offer also if I'm part of any, groups, which I am, like By Women Built, which I love, and other groups of founders, that's what I offer them is you can do this. There is no stopping you. Just, power on through. And that's, taking the leap.
I love that. I love everything about that. And I think it says a lot about your character and who you are, and is a beautiful gift to have that tenacity. And hopefully someone listening to this will say, I'm going to try something, be brave, right? Next to my be brave and try something that I wouldn't have tried before, because in the TechPixie world, we call it the unseen forces, right? Working in your favor. So as you confidently advance in the direction of your dream, those unseen forces start to work in your favor as you cross that invisible line and make those bold decisions. And I think it's very cool to see that in that story. So what was the biggest surprise to come out of this career interruption? Your husband tells you this isn't scalable, not going to happen. You're crushed. You got to rebuild it. And obviously you come up with this incredible idea. Where did the idea come from? This has got to be the biggest surprise of all of the surprises in your career.
What's funny is what you've just said, unseen forces. That's kind of where I want to start. Like just at this table where I'm sitting, I was interviewing a psychic as a journalist. I was like, this is kooky and weird. I'd heard she'd done amazing things. And I thought, I've got to interview you. So she said, well, why don't I just come to your house and we can talk about you? I can do it for you. And I thought, okay, this is kind of quirky and weird, but let's go for it. So Amaryllis Fraser is her name, and she is extraordinary. She sat down right here next to me, and she said, you're going to start a business, and it's something that you're giving out to people, and it makes people well, and nobody's done it before. And it's this ingredient, that's this thing that's been around for a really, really long time, but nobody's heard of it. And you're going to make it, and you're giving it out to people, and you're giving it out to mums. You're giving it out to mums at the school gates. You're going, take this for you and your children. It's going to make them well. I had no idea what she was talking about.
That gives me chills.
I was a journalist. I was an actress. What is she talking about? If she'd wanted to Google me and find out, some stuff before she came to see me, she would have, that's all she would have found. So she sat here and she said, Spirit is telling me, because she has a spirit guide, you're not going to know what you're doing. You're going to have to learn science like you've never learned it before. I was terrible at science at school. You are going to practically a scientist. You're going to have to study really, really hard. And you are going to become the face of this particular thing, but go for it. And I didn't know what she was talking about. And then quite soon after that, kids had coughs and colds, and at nursery, nursery is just, it's a petri dish, it's a cesspit. Nobody tells you this. It's one of the many things they don't tell you about parenthood, that you will be sick for the next 4 years, 5 years, at least. And so I was looking for a solution as a journalist, and I was writing an article on how to keep kids well. And a scientist I interviewed said, you want to have lactoferrin? I haven't had a cold in 30 years. And this stuff arrived, beautiful, flying pale pink powder. And my husband said, what is that? And I said, well, apparently it cures a cold. And he was like, all right, well, let's give it a go. And so we did, and it was like magic. I shoveled it into the kids every time they got that glassy-eyed look. As soon as I could feel something in my throat, in my nose, I took some of this powder. So did my husband. It was unbelievable how it knocked it on the head. Unbelievable. And, I've been on this planet long enough to know I've had enough coughs and colds. It stopped it in its tracks. So after a few months, I said, I'm going to start a business with this thing, because nobody's heard of it. And it was starting to ring. I was thinking to myself, is this what Amaryllis said? And it's weird that when you think, oh my God, I'm actually going through the thing that she said, I'm now learning, and then I'm on PubMed learning about all the science. I'm like, I'm doing the thing that she said I was going to do. That was weird. That was very weird. But in short, I started this brand, and one final quite fun story is that I didn't know what to call it. And the scientific name, because I was reading all the science, is Lactoferrin, big L, small f. Big L, small f. And I was on my way to pick up the kids from nursery, and I was just looking at the ground, and it suddenly came to me, leapfrog, L, small f. That's such a joyful word. And, it stops you getting cold, so you can play, you can get on with your life. I love this. So I came home, and again, this is all to do with my husband. I was sitting upstairs on the mezzanine right there, and my husband was down here, and he said, do you know what? I think I leapfrogged over that cold with that stuff again. And I said, I can't believe it. That's what I've decided to call the business. I can't believe you said that word. And so I was like, okay, this is it. This is a done deal. It's called Leapfrog. I'm doing this brand. It's all in the stars. It's happening. And
I love it. That is so cool. I love everything about that. Now, you've definitely learned some lessons along the way. So can you share some of the lessons that you've learned with us? Because I think it's really powerful to hear lessons from women who've had a career interruption, come through that career interruption stronger, built something really phenomenal. You've got to have taken away some incredible things from that experience.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going back. I think just to go for it, to follow your instincts, one foot in front of the other. Like I said, I didn't know what I was doing, but one foot in front of the other, and find smart people. I have found the smartest people I can find. I have emailed the best in the field, Lactoferrin experts, nutritionists, marketing person who's working with me, social media, from everybody in my orbit. I found the best people that I can find, that I can learn from, because, there's always that doubt that I haven't got the skills to do any of this. But, of course, there are going to be people who will do it better than me. And I've heard you talk about this before. You need to do that. You have to do that. It frees you up to do the other stuff, the blue sky thinking that the entrepreneur needs to do. But yeah, it's just, again, it's being tenacious. It's going for it.
Yeah. Well, I recently went to the Mel Robbins tour when she came to London, and one of her big things, and I've talked about this on other podcasts too, but she started out with this 5-second rule, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, just do it, and I think that's a very powerful way of living life, just taking those bold moves, going up and speaking to the politician, not knowing where that's going to lead, and then it suddenly leads to something else. I mean, when I started my business, it was off the back of a phone call. I didn't have any money to start the business. I needed money to start the business. I had a great idea. And so I called someone, and they said, oh, you're never going to believe this. There's a grant just came across my desk. You should apply for it. And within 5 months, we had the money that we needed to launch the business. So, and I didn't have to pay it back because it was a grant, which is great. Mm-hmm. We need more of that. And for women in particular, because I think a lot of women need that funding to start things. They don't have the savings, and they don't have the network, and the investment has to be paid back, and loans have to be paid back. But actually being able to start a business with a grant, I think, is massively valuable. And I majorly benefited from that in my own life. But, that's, to me, that it's those intuitive moves that you make. You kind of, I don't know why I'm picking up the phone to call this person, but I'm going to do it. Or, I don't know what this person's going to say, but the answer is going to be no if I don't ask. Right. So I think that those are really great lessons that you've learned there. If you were to say that there's a motto that you live by, what would it be?
Take the leap.
That's so interesting. I was at
sorry, I was just going to say, it's sitting here on my box, at the bottom of the box, hashtag take the leap.
Take the leap.
It's on the bottom of all of our boxes.
I love it.
It's my motto in every way.
I was at an entrepreneurial dinner maybe 5 or 6 years ago. And no, it was before that. I was right before I raised money. And it was, everyone was talking about their experiences raising money and other things. And I remember one of the things she said that was so powerful. She said, one thing I've learned in life is if you take the leap, the net will always be there. And that was huge for me. And actually, it was off the back of that I said, okay, right, I'm going to raise money. I'm going to take the business to the next level. But I don't know if I would have had the courage to do it without someone who'd been there saying, take the leap, the net will always be there. So I love that. Any other stories you have for us about taking the leap and it all working out?
Well, I guess her name is coming in, her face is coming into my mind. But Kate Prince, who was one of your previous podcast interviewees, she is the founder of Ancient and Brave. And I think, it's really important to have mentors in your life. That's why I'm part of Buy Women Built. And I've got special people that I go to. Renee Elliott, who founded Planet Organic, she mentored me for a long time, but it was Kate Prince who introduced me to her. So I had a happenstance meeting with Kate. I knew her husband a little bit, and we met at the theater. And so she suggested I meet Renee Elliott, who was brilliant with helping me sort of start the business. But there was one point when a man I spoke to said, and he'd been a journalist, and then he'd launched a supplement company. So I thought he'd be a perfect person to talk to. And I remember sitting next to him on a park bench, and he said, it's going to be very expensive. It's going to cost so much money. Are you ready for that? Really? I was so disheartened. I got home and I phoned Kate and I said, I don't know if I can do this. It's going to be so much money. Like, do you think I should do this? Maybe I should. She went, absolute rot. It's going to cost you 30 grand, probably at most. Have you got that? Start with that. You're going to be absolutely fine. Just get on with it. And it did. I put 30 grand into it. I got my first batch of 500 boxes of Immune, and the rest is history. And so thank you, Kate, but thank you, mentors. I almost didn't do it.
Well, you've just described something that I call partners in believing versus sacred friends. Right. And one time I misspelled the word sacred friend and I wrote scared. And I realized that's what a sacred friend is. They're scared. They're scared for you. They don't want you to have the pain, the heartache. They don't want you to lose your money. And so they're really a scared friend is what they are. But, sacred friends. And the reason I call them sacred friends is because there's something for you to learn in that interaction, right? Yes. There's a part of you that has to grow to overcome that objection or whatever it is. The Dalai Lama would describe the Chinese government as his sacred friend, right? He has to live with all of what exists and has to do it in a peaceful way. So he had to become a different person, have a different level of compassion to keep going, right? So that's what a sacred friend is. But then on the other hand, your partner in believing, Kate, is that ability to believe in you even when you don't believe in yourself, to encourage you to go forward even when everybody else says this is going to be expensive, you shouldn't do it, and we need a mix of both. But I think the important thing is that we learn to spend a lot of time with partners in believing and limit our time with our sacred friends because they're just not that helpful or useful in moving us forward.
Oh my gosh, I love that. And you're so right. I did learn something from that interaction. It sort of stalled my tenacity for a moment, but then, powered me forward also. So you're absolutely right. That was so beautifully, eloquently said. Thank you.
But I also love that you grounded yourself back with your partner in believing.
Yes.
And I think that's something that people need to do. They need to figure out who their partners in believing are. And when they do encounter a sacred friend, they need to be able to ground themselves back with the people who believe in them, because it's a lonely world if you don't have people that are there, that have got your back, right? So
absolutely. I love that. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, and thank you for coming on the podcast. And, is there anything, I think you should tell people where they can find the Leapfrog Remedies, because I think they will find them very useful. I certainly have absolutely loved taking the focus, and I definitely 100% noticed the difference on the day. In fact, this happened to me the other day. I forgot to take it. It got to about 4:00 in the afternoon, and I thought, today's just not going as well as yesterday. And I realized I had forgotten to take it with my other supplements that I take for ADHD. And then, I felt a lot better after taking it. So I, personally can attest to for me, it's made a big difference. And that's why, I never promote anyone on the podcast or bring anyone to the podcast for stuff that I wouldn't try or do myself. So, I appreciate that you've let me try it out, and I will continue to use it. But where can people find it if they're interested? And what are the 3 offerings? You said Focus, Immune, and
Snooze. First of all, thank you for that amazing testimonial. It's our newest product. So it's really wonderful to hear you say that. The feedback has been great. Well, this is the immune one. It's the one that you take at the very first sign of a cough or a cold, and you will see how things play out. This is the one that you were just talking about, Leapfrog Focus, which is for cognition, clarity, and calm, and you just described its effects so beautifully. And then this is for sleep. It's a sleep support, Leapfrog Snooze. You take 1 or 2 chewable tablets before bed, and you sleep like a baby because it literally is the same peptide that makes a baby go sleepy after they've drunk milk. It creates a peptide that travels to the brain and soothes the brain. So it's a really interesting effect, this one too. So they're all a bit different, and
they're different flavors as well. You've got berry,
delicious berry flavor. I love that one. The apple and mango. Yeah. And then this one is a citrus flavor. You can find them at Selfridges. So we got into Selfridges quite early on, which was obviously a huge milestone, eureka, pinch me moment. And then also in Revital Health stores, in pharmacies like Lips Pharmacy, and online at Leapfrog Remedies.
Awesome. Is it leapfrogremedies.com?
Leapfrogremedies.com.
Okay, yeah. Good. Well, we'll make sure that's all in the show notes. And I'm so grateful to you for coming on today and sharing your story. It's been really illuminating, and I know people will enjoy listening to it. So thanks again.
Thank you, Joy. Thanks.
Wow, that was so much fun. You know, these backstories of entrepreneurs always, well, they never cease to amaze me. They are always such a delight. On Instagram, we've had some comments come through, and someone said, "Love the origin story. Thank you for sharing." And that's really how I feel about this interview. So thanks everybody for watching or listening. Please share with your friends and let them know about this podcast. We would love to have even more listeners. We are working towards our 150,000th download. So please do share. We do appreciate you listening. And if you have anyone you think we should be interviewing, send us an email at support@techpixies.com. We'd love to hear about it. And in the meantime, go try the Leapfrog Remedies. They work. They're pretty awesome. And I certainly have enjoyed my experience with them. We'll have everything in the show notes for you as well in terms of links. So check it out on our website, techpixies.com/podcast. Bye for now.